For decades, the United Kingdom was seen as one of the best places in the world to build a life, a wealthy country with one of the most important economies on the planet, world-renowned universities, well-paid jobs, and cities that attracted millions of people looking for new opportunities. But there is a problem. While the world still sees the United Kingdom as one of the great global powers, many British people themselves have started wanting to leave the country. In recent years, an increasing number of young professionals, doctors, nurses, and skilled workers have decided to leave the United Kingdom in search of a better life elsewhere. And this raises a difficult question. Why is one of the richest countries in the world becoming a place where many people no longer want to live? Behind the modern buildings of London lies a reality that few people show: a housing crisis that has made homes unaffordable, wages that have stopped growing, public services under pressure, and a younger generation that is beginning to have fewer opportunities than their own parents. The United Kingdom is still wealthy, but for many people who live there, the question is no longer, how do I get there? But rather, is it still worth staying? Today, we will discover what happened to one of the world's most influential countries and why so many British people are looking for a new life far away from home. One of the most concerning signs of the United Kingdom's current situation is the growing number of skilled professionals leaving the country in search of better opportunities. Doctors, engineers, researchers, technology specialists, and young graduates from British universities are beginning to question whether it is still worth building their future within their own country. The main reason behind this departure is related to the loss of purchasing power. Although the United Kingdom still offers salaries considered high compared to many countries, the cost of living has increased much faster, especially in major cities. In London, for example, many young professionals manage to find good jobs, but they face enormous difficulties paying rent, saving money, or buying a home. For a generation that grew up believing that studying, obtaining a good career, and working hard would guarantee a better life, the current reality has become frustrating. Many young people realize that, even with qualifications and stable jobs, they have fewer opportunities to build wealth than their parents had in the past. This situation becomes even more evident when the United Kingdom is compared with other developed countries. In the United States, for example, some highly skilled careers offer salaries far higher than those in Britain. Countries such as Australia and New Zealand have also started attracting professionals looking for a better combination of income, quality of life, and opportunities for growth. One of the sectors most affected by this talent drain is the British healthcare system. The NHS, doctors and nurses, who represent one of the most important sectors for any country, have started leaving the United Kingdom due to a combination of long working hours, increasing pressure, salaries that do not keep up with the cost of living, and a feeling of being undervalued professionally. At the same time that many skilled British professionals are leaving the United Kingdom, the country continues to record high levels of immigration. This movement has created a curious situation. The number of people arriving in the country has increased, but this does not necessarily mean that the economy is gaining the workers it needs the most. A large portion of immigrants arriving in the United Kingdom are primarily seeking access to the job market, universities, and better living conditions. The country remains an attractive destination because of the English language, the reputation of its educational institutions, and the presence of major international companies. However, the profile of those entering and those leaving the country shows an important difference. While many British people leaving the United Kingdom have high levels of education and professional experience, a significant portion of new workers occupy sectors with lower productivity and lower wages. This imbalance can create challenges for the economy. A country needs not only a large number of workers, but also professionals capable of creating innovation, developing new technologies, starting businesses, and increasing the efficiency of different sectors. When an economy becomes increasingly dependent on labour to fill lower skilled positions while losing some of its most specialised professionals, it may struggle to increase productivity and compete with other developed nations. In addition, population growth caused by immigration puts even more pressure on areas that already face structural problems, such as housing, transportation, and public services. Without enough investment to keep up with this growth, the arrival of more people can intensify problems that already exist. For many years, the United Kingdom was seen as one of the most prosperous, influential, and desirable countries in the world. For many British people, there is a feeling that the country has already experienced a better era, especially during the 1990s and the early 2000s, when there was a stronger sense of optimism and confidence in the future. This period became known as Cool Britannia, a time when British culture gained enormous international attention. Music, fashion, and entertainment from the United Kingdom conquered the world, with bands such as Oasis and the Spice Girls becoming symbols of a generation. At the same time, the end of the Cold War brought a global feeling of stability and hope, making many people believe that the future would continue to improve. But this nostalgia does not exist only because of culture. Economically, the 1990s were truly a period of strong growth for the United Kingdom. After a difficult recession at the beginning of the decade, the country entered a long period of economic expansion, with rising GDP, increased investment, and the strengthening of important sectors. Much of this success came from London and its powerful financial market. The city became one of the largest financial centres on the planet, attracting companies, investors, and highly skilled professionals from all over the world. Banking, investments, and the real estate market boosted consumption and helped transform London into one of the richest cities on earth. However, behind this prosperity was a problem that would only become clear years later. Economic growth was becoming increasingly concentrated in financial services and major urban centres, while many other regions of the United Kingdom began to lose strength. The former British industrial powerhouse was slowly disappearing. Cities that had depended for decades on factories, mining, and heavy industry began facing company closures and job losses. While London prospered, many communities outside the major centres felt they were being left behind. The United Kingdom continued to grow, but its economic model was becoming increasingly dependent on a single sector: finance. This dependence brought enormous benefits during the years of growth, but it also created a weakness. When the 2008 financial crisis hit the world, it exposed the hidden problems within the British economy. The country realised that it had invested too little in areas such as industry, infrastructure, and innovation, while becoming increasingly dependent on banks and the real estate market. After the crisis, economic growth never returned to the same pace. Productivity slowed down, wages began growing very slowly, and the gap between the richest and poorest regions increased. Because of this, many British people feel that the country has lost part of the confidence and prosperity that existed in the past. This does not mean that the United Kingdom is no longer one of the largest economies in the world, but rather that the promise of an always better future seems to have disappeared for part of the population. One of the biggest problems currently faced by the population of the United Kingdom is the housing crisis. For many people, especially younger generations, owning a home has stopped being an achievable goal and has become an increasingly distant dream. For decades, the United Kingdom built fewer homes than it needed to keep up with population growth. While the number of people increased, the supply of housing did not grow at the same pace. The result was a huge imbalance between demand and availability, causing house prices to rise much faster than wages. This difference created a situation where many workers, even those with stable jobs, are unable to buy a property. Today, for many young British people, purchasing a home depends on something known as the bank of mum and dad, meaning financial help from their own parents to afford a house deposit. In the past, it was common for someone with an ordinary job to be able to buy a house and build wealth throughout their lifetime. However, this reality has changed. Wages have grown slowly over the past few decades, while property prices have increased at a much faster rate. This change has created a growing divide between those who already owned properties and those who entered the housing market more recently. Many older Britons were able to buy homes when they were more affordable, and now own assets worth hundreds of thousands of pounds. Meanwhile, younger generations face expensive rent, little financial stability, and limited chances of becoming homeowners. But the origin of this problem is not only related to the lack of new housing construction. One decision that had a major impact was the Right to Buy program, created in the late 1970s. The policy allowed residents of public housing to purchase their homes with large discounts, making it possible for millions of people to become homeowners. At the time, the measure was seen as a major success because it increased the number of people who owned their own properties. However, the problem emerged because many of these sold social housing properties were not replaced with new public housing. Over the years, the supply of social housing decreased significantly while the population continued to grow. This forced more people to rely on the private rental market, increasing competition for properties and pushing prices even higher. The impact of this crisis goes far beyond simply being unable to buy a home. Rising housing costs mean that many families have less money available for other needs, such as food, education, transportation, and leisure. In addition, thousands of people end up depending on temporary accommodation provided by local governments. Many of these accommodations have serious problems, such as dampness, mold, and poor living conditions. For families experiencing this situation, instability can affect everything from adults' careers to children's education. The crisis also damages social mobility. In a society where owning a home has always been one of the main ways to build wealth, an entire generation risks remaining permanently behind previous generations. For decades, the NHS, National Health Service, was considered one of the greatest achievements of the United Kingdom. Created in 1948, the British public healthcare system had a simple and revolutionary proposal to provide free medical care at the moment of need, regardless of people's income. For many years, the NHS became part of British identity. For many citizens, it represented one of the greatest advantages of living in the United Kingdom, the idea that anyone could receive medical treatment without having to worry about enormous costs, as happens in many other countries. However, in recent decades, this system has faced increasing pressure. Population growth, an aging population, and rising medical costs have transformed the NHS into one of the country's biggest challenges. One of the main current problems is the increase in waiting times. More and more patients have to wait months or even years to receive certain treatments. Specialist appointments, surgeries, and important medical tests have experienced major delays, creating the feeling that a system once seen as a global reference is losing efficiency. But the NHS problem is not simply a lack of money. Although many people argue that the system has been underfunded for years, the reality is more complex. In recent years, the government has increased investment and hired more healthcare professionals, but much of this money is being used only to maintain the basic operation of the system. This happens because medical costs have increased significantly. The British population is aging, and older people naturally require more healthcare. In addition, new treatments, technologies, and modern medicines are much more expensive than they were in the past. At the same time, healthcare professionals also face a difficult situation. Doctors and nurses report excessive workloads, constant pressure, and salaries that often fail to keep up with the rising cost of living. As a result, many professionals are leaving the NHS or seeking opportunities in other countries where working conditions are better. This problem has created a contradiction. The United Kingdom needs more healthcare professionals than ever, but at the same time, it is losing some of those already working within the system. Another challenge is that the NHS must deal with long-standing infrastructure problems. Many hospitals and medical facilities require modernisation, but available resources are often consumed by immediate needs, such as paying staff, purchasing medicines, and meeting growing demand. Despite being one of the largest economies in the world, the United Kingdom faces a problem that is receiving increasing attention: the difficulty of maintaining and modernising its infrastructure. Roads, railways, hospitals, transportation systems, and other public services suffer years of underinvestment, delays, and costs far above expectations. For a country that was once one of the greatest industrial powers on the planet, this situation represents a major contradiction. The United Kingdom has an advanced economy and some of the most important cities in the world, but many of its physical structures appear to be falling behind compared to other developed countries. One of the biggest examples of this difficulty is the HS2 project, a high-speed railway line planned to better connect the north and south of England. The initial idea was to create a modern transportation network that would bring less developed regions closer to major economic centres, increasing employment opportunities and economic growth. When it was introduced, the project was seen as a major investment in the country's future. However, over the years, it faced several problems: delays, rising construction costs, and difficulties in execution. The initial projected budget increased far beyond expectations, turning HS2 into a symbol of Britain's struggles to deliver major infrastructure projects. Instead of representing a new era of modernisation, it came to be seen by many as an example of inefficient planning and poor cost control. But the problem goes far beyond a single railway line. The United Kingdom faces broader difficulties in building major projects. Public projects often take many years to get off the ground and end up costing much more than in other countries. One of the reasons pointed out for this is excessive bureaucracy and lengthy approval processes. Building new roads, railways, or public facilities can involve long stages of planning, regulation, and negotiations, causing projects to move forward slowly. In addition, decades of focusing on short-term gains have caused many long-term investments to be delayed. While other countries invested heavily in modernising their infrastructure, the United Kingdom has often prioritised maintaining what already existed, leaving important improvements for later. This problem also appears in areas such as public transportation and local services. Some regions face outdated systems, unreliable trains, deteriorating roads, and a lack of capacity to meet the needs of a growing population. The consequence is that infrastructure ends up becoming another obstacle to economic growth. When transportation is inefficient, companies have more difficulty operating, workers lose time commuting, and regions far from major centres continue to have fewer opportunities.